Welcome to Techcentric Planet, where we offer a glimpse to the future of humanity through the lens of technology.
We've sought out innovators and founders who are interested in providing solutions to some of our most fundamental human-centric problems with a view to help our planet.
I'm Mary Beth Hosking, and my co-host, the masterful Professor Martin Parr.
On this episode, we have Natalie Matthews, who will be discussing RehumanOS. Welcome, Natalie.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
So tell us about your innovation and how it will help society and the planet.
Sure. So it's a brand new application, should I say. Basically, it is designed to, it's a new category. And it's an application to help people through the human experience of basically anything to do with grief or trauma. Now, as we all know, the human experience is filled with many, many different types of traumas. As a result, I basically saw a huge gap in the market, not just the market, but as a category as a whole, of helping and understanding humans from the get-go and also through a lot of their constructs and experiences that they face. And as a result, I created and designed a technology and a framework and an architecture that will support the human experience through that. And that is an application which I've called RehumanOS.
I love that. I love that idea. Because I was thinking about it as you were saying that, Natalie, and about when we are in that grief cycle, we don't necessarily want to speak to anyone. We want, and you close down. And so being able to access an OS, an app that actually helps us along that journey, I think is huge. And I wonder, so why? Why did you decide to develop this?
Well, a lot of it came from seeing and understanding. I've been very fascinated by human behaviour from a very young age and psychology from a very young age, and I've always been in sort of understanding homedics or understanding sort of the psychology or what goes on, why people think the way they think, why they act the way they do, and why they behave the way they do. And then I sort of understood that and have done much work in understanding and reading and studying that for many years, but then had my own personal experiences. So much so, my brother was diagnosed with cancer a couple of years back, and I saw firsthand the rupture that he went through, and also what our family went through, and also what I was experiencing as well. And then earlier on this year, I had a close partner of mine pass away, and had exactly the same experience, even though I was very aware of like the mapping and understanding how human behavior works, how trauma works, how grief works. I understood and saw a huge gap in a lag of my recognition of acknowledgement of what was happening and going on to actually what I was experiencing and facing at the same time. And it just made me kind of understand how to map it. And basically, it sounds strange, it's almost like I took the trauma myself that I was going through, and I was able to absolutely map a brand new sequence that just hasn't been recognized or thought about or acknowledged before, which is why and how I've kind of been able to build out this new identity of a category. And then from that, I've actually then developed potentially an actual a white paper that will be used in scientific study potentially if it goes through and gets proven, to support the application as well from the actual architecture perspective. So I guess to answer that question, Mary Beth, it's a combination of my own personal experience, a combination of understanding and studying human behaviour and psychology for a long period of time, and just seeing, identifying and looking at sort of what everyone tends to handle and go through. And when you're a woman and you talk to a lot of other women or talk to a lot of people through their experiences, as an individual, a lot of them actually have and face the same issues as we all do. You kind of get stuck in these hurdles, in these loop patterns of really trying to sort of handle and comprehend that. And it's just, even though we talk about a lot of somatic and therapies, a lot of them tend to be after the fact and the aftermath, even though a lot of sort of the deep trauma and the deep grief that you were experiencing at the time just isn't handled very well. And even I found that too, I was trying to sort of talk to friends and family about what I was going through, but it was only really me that was able to unpick it for myself and understand that versus sort of the collective and the external. And that again helped me identify that mapping area and that mapping gap that just made me go, actually, there's a big area here that is only individualized, and it's only something that you experience yourself. Even though you can talk to it, you've still got to acknowledge and process that yourself.
Yes, no one can process it for you. So out of the embers of such significant loss, you were able to, I think that's very courageous, that you were able to take that and use that experience to map something that is so personal. It is personal. It's a personal journey. But what you've done, I think, is circumvented that it's very hard to get into see psychologists. It's very hard to get the mental health support that you need when you're going through that grief period, and to be able to sort of just circumvent that and have something at your fingertips when you're going through it. I think that is incredibly powerful, and I think Martin and I were both very privileged to have you on the podcast talking about something
thank you.
So incredibly personal. And I could sit here and say I'm sorry for your loss and all of that, but I know only too well just how awful the experience is and how very, very personal it is.
Yeah. But I think that's, I see everything as a journey, as on the way and part of the evolution of the human experience. And I'm not dumbing down the grief or the trauma that you feel. And I don't think you can ever do that. That's so individual. But I think when you're able to process things easier and better and you understand them, and that transformation period, and again, and I guess I said to you before, having understood a lot about psychology and understood much on the processing, my brain works in a very architectural way. And by going through that experience, helped me identify on a much larger scale, on a much bigger collective, to go, this is a big gap, like this is huge. And it's also in the tone, it's in the language, it's I think we forget sort of the sensitivities of what it is to be human, and the softness and the kindness and the delicacies that we actually need, particularly when we go through traumatic events and when we experience these things. We tend to put on these fronts, and we tend to sort of say we're fine, and we tend to say it's all right, but in actual fact they're very difficult for us. And we have a lot of these shames and guilts and fears and a lot of all these emotions that sort of really prevent that ability to sort of reflect and ability to sort of comprehend and actually relate to another. And I think that's again what I was able to identify. And it's almost like I'm not discounting or saying that the therapies aren't accurate. It's just that I saw a gap in prior to that, where you actually need a bit of sort of hand holding, where you do need a bit more a sensitivity, where you do need a bit more holding and nurturing through that sort of grief period. And whenever you look at any of the sort of griefs or any of the big sort of traumas that happen in life, a lot of them, it takes months, weeks, years often to even get some therapies after, or people to even recognize what they're going through. Most people, and again, this is part of my mapping that I was able to identify, was there's a bit of sort of deconstruction that happens immediately, where you scramble and you just don't understand what's happening, and your brain is actually just trying to sort of make sense of it. And that's what I mean by the processing. I was by going and living through that experience, I was literally like, oh my goodness, I can map anything. I've got one of those brains that I'm very gifted in being able to do. And me going through that experience, I was like, wow, like there's actually something here that I can see could be a preventative method, and actually sort of map people better and map them along the pathway a bit better, and identify exactly what's actually happening to them from their emotional experience and specific to them. So it's not just a blanket case. You're not just sort of saying, oh, it's grief. It's actually going, no, it's grief specified to an actual emotion that you're specifically experiencing. And I've spoken to you before about this, Mary Beth, around, loss to some people is, it's financial. They lose a partner, they lose finances. To other people, it's companionship. They're losing an actual father figure or a mother figure. There's a lot, and that experience is so individualized. And I was able to sort of identify that instead of it just saying it's a grief or it's a loss, it's actually going even a bit further and sort of pinpointing to sort of like the critical issues that are specific to each individual person, to go, actually, this is how we can handle this better for you.
Okay.
That's really incredible. It's so interesting to hear you talk about this, because as Mary Beth said, out of that sort of out of a terrible situation, you've brought something very positive into the world, and that takes a lot of courage to do. What
thank
hurdles
you.
did you face when developing this?
I think the hurdles that I face that are often unspoken about is, I think people are scared of anything new. Anything new, you know, it kind of questions the status quo. And I think a lot of people get scared that it's going to disrupt sort of current structures and current ways of doing things, but it doesn't. And I think you have to address that head on, and that's something I want to address head on. I'm trying to be a bridgeway and a pathway to bridging better fields together, as opposed to sort of identifying. And I'm very good, again, at seeing those gaps in the market. I've always worked in sort of tech and architecture and understood and change and understood where the gaps lie. So they come quite naturally to me. And I tend to find that change, people don't resist change, so to speak. They resist the miscommunication or not understanding why the change is there or what you're doing. And I think that's probably one of the biggest hurdles to this, is trying to sort of work with, and I think also the differences too come from, you know, whenever you create something new technology, there's always resistance with technology. You know, there's always this sort of them against us sort of mentality. And that's always the case anyway, especially with the sort of everything that's going on with AI. I think everyone's a bit scared of losing control, losing their power, losing their free will. But that's, in actual fact, particularly for me with what I'm creating, is I'm trying to bridge how we can make humans better by using technology as opposed to using it against us. And for me, this is part of one of those things. It's helping you understand and giving you back your own empowerment and educating you and elevating you as an individual to then be able to say, right, you know, you can't be controlled by external events or external things that happen to you in any human experience once you fully master and understand your internal mechanisms. And for me, we're not very good at that. I'm going to be honest. I don't think we're not very good at educating on real core human problems. And a lot of us are just left to sort of handle and fumble our way through a lot of real traumatic events. And most of us don't actually have great stabilities or great stable backgrounds or upbringings, and that all plays into it, right? And so again, being very gifted and very blessed, and to a degree somewhat intelligent enough to sort of see a lot of those areas and those gaps and be able to map it, is a gift to the world. And I really hope that this technology is something that will be able to sort of transform people's mindsets and people's experiences, but also sort of stabilise them a bit better as well.
Absolutely. And what would you have done differently? What would you have changed on that journey?
I'm not sure I could have changed anything. I think everything happens as the way it is. I do believe in everything in divine order of life. I think to be honest with you, I've still got quite a journey ahead. So I don't think it's a case of it's just ticked off right now. I've got a mountain and a massive mountain still to climb. I think it's just getting the right people involved. I think resistance is a big key, you know, because I mean, when you're talking about anything with medical, with anything human behaviour, or with anything psychology, there is a lot of red tape. I say red tape, but there's a lot of protection, should I say, which is the right word, and it's always hard to penetrate anything with a lot of with a lot of protection, as opposed, and because it's always been done a certain way. And I think that's probably one of the biggest hurdles I'm probably going to face and continuously face, is to try and get people to use and understand and see it. But I do think with what I've created and the way I've created it, and once it's functioning and working, probably by section, trauma by trauma, by grief, you start to sort of see that, and that sort of unfold and sort of work for itself. I do truly believe once you see the benefits of any tech or any system working, it just sort of it markets itself, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think it's that. I always say it takes one person to make a movement, and what you're actually doing here is starting a movement. Is actually sort of coming in at a point in time when something's necessary, and there is a gap. So I think you will hit resistance, but it's about your resilience and knowing you, as I do know, knowing the sort of change leader that you are. I know that you have experienced so much in that resistance in that change space. It's the same thing. It's just different hurdles, different things to face. But okay, so I'm not sure if you've faced this yet, but naysayers, have you had any naysayers saying things about the product, and if so, how are you pushing through?
I've had one or two when I've just briefly mentioned it, obviously because I'm still in sort of like build stage and actually sort of obviously investment side of stage. A few people that I've mentioned to are very anti using an app. They're like, well, I wouldn't want to use that, or I would rather speak to somebody, or I'd love to deal with a person. 100%. You're going to get that anyway. But I think the beauty of what I've created and the way I've created it is it's one of those secret weapons that I don't think you see the benefit until you go through something yourself, and then all of a sudden you're faced with this issue. And I think as a whole, humans are so we don't like speaking about feelings. We don't like talking openly. I don't know why. It's so strange, but it's how we learn from each other. But as a result, when you're facing these experiences, to try and actually handle them and handle that processing, it's literally processing. It's all it is your body understanding a certain level at a certain stage of your awareness, a certain stage of your perspective and perceptions, and trying to then basically grasp this massive gap that you've just jumped to in immediate experience. And as a result, you've got all of these sort of emotions that just dissipate and you don't have a clue how to manage, and some of them you've never experienced before, and as a result you're sort of having to handle that and sort of map yourself through it. But I think when you're going through that experience, I think that's only when you're going to see something like this app probably come to real life and be like, oh my god, I needed that. And having something nurturing to sort of actually stagely step you through in the right language and the right tone, and sort of mapped to specifically you, and being like, it's okay to feel what you'll feel. It's absolutely normal to sort of not understand this. It's completely, this is actually what's happening for you, X, Y, and Z of what's going on right now. And just being able to sort of justify to somebody that they're not crazy, or they're not lost, or they're not broken. And I think a lot of that is it's actually very simple. It's actually very, very simple, but we just don't do it well in our constructs externally. And so I think when the naysayers, like anything, I think you're always going to get resistance. And I take resistance as something as a great learning tool and something you can develop and learn from and make better. As opposed to, and I think that's part and parcel of a challenge. I think anybody or any entrepreneur that faces naysayers or challenges, people with resistance, should use it as a challenge to be like, okay, I'm going to prove you wrong, or okay, let's try and figure out what the actual issue is. And I think it's just because people are scared. I think, I've had people just sort of also say it's such a big category you're trying to sort of break, or it's such a big thing. Yes, it is, but that's also that shows you how big the gap is. And I'm not trying to, I guess from my point of view, I'm not trying to do it all at once. I think it's got to be staged. It's got to be like bit by bit. And I think also once you see it working with one, it's almost like it's a no-brainer. It's almost like, why have we not done this before? And that's for me, when I mapped it and done it, I was like, how does this not exist? Like, oh my God. But I think it does only truly take someone going through the lived experience who can actually have the experience, but also compartmentalize the trauma, which is what I was able to do, and go, wow, actually let's use this. Let's actually identify. And that's what category creators are. They are the ones that sort of see they experience it, feel it, go through it, and then build the category. I guess the difference is because this is, because it's trauma, but everything's trauma, depending on the lens. Some people going to the dentist is trauma. Some people having a partner die is trauma, but your cat passing away could be trauma to somebody. Like, that's my point. But again, when you look at the emotions, when you look at sort of the feelings that people go through, they are very similar. You can't discount one experience of trauma to another person's, but the understanding and the mapping is exactly the same.
I think what you've also done is you've given it, when you're in that grief cycle and that something first happens and your brain is trying to make sense, there are no words. It's hard to articulate. And what you've been able to do is take that trauma, as you said, compartmentalize it, and then because of your background, the psychology background, and because of your experience with change, etc., you've been able to wrap the language around it. And I think that's... I remember, I think we can all remember when we were like 14 going through puberty, and you get so angry because stuff was going on, but you couldn't there was no way of articulating it because you didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
Stuff was happening. I mean, as an older woman, menopause, right? We're going through it. I'm going through it, and it's like, but now I have a language to wrap around it. And what you've done is given a language to something that is so incredibly personal. And yes, it's at its infancy, but I think it's an absolute gap. And the thing is, I think those naysayers, you're going to find that there is the digital youth, okay? We've got people coming through now that have only ever known digital. They don't know how to write with a pen. They only know how to type. They only know those sorts of things. So this is not going to, and they will be the future. This is not going to be new. This is not, the people that you're speaking to now are of maybe an older generation who are saying, oh, well, I wouldn't use that. But maybe you're not the demographic for right now. Yeah, possibly.
I think coming back to what you just said then is key. I think what it is wrapping the language and helping somebody unpick what's going on. Most things in life is just confusion and not understanding or seeing it from a different perspective, right? Like, it's literally that simple. And when you can help somebody see and understand what's actually going on, whether it's being diagnosed with cancer, or it's coming to end of life, or don't want to be seen as sick, or don't want to be seen as vulnerable, don't want to lose your job, don't want to lose the status and the identity that I've built up. There's a lot of those things too, right, that build within that sort of that one grief, that type of grief for somebody. And it's about helping somebody sort of understand that and identify that and work with that, and then go, okay, what can we do? What's the bridge? I think there's one thing as identifying any change, or identifying the problem, the root cause, and then bridging actually what the pathway, the best pathway is in the language that the person best needs, or whatever therapy. And to some people it is going to therapy. Some people it's going to be doing meditation. Some people it's going to be, I need to do a community or a group or find like-minded people. And so it's, everyone's again different, but again, that's kind of what the app does. It basically helps do those three things: the root cause of what's happening and going on for you, and then actually sort of in the right language that you need with the bridge, and then obviously the pass on to potentially other sort of areas or things that work best for you in your modality of language.
Yeah, it's so incredible to see what you've achieved. And I think that, as you said, it is so needed. It is something that, as a human experience, it's something we don't really, you're not taught at school what to do. You're not taught. There's no formal kind of here's a way of being able to cope. People are just kind of expected to. So as you say, I think it is a very necessary gap. And what would you like to see happen with your innovation now? Where would you like to see this go?
Oh, I'd love to obviously see it go, any healthcare. I see it being big. I think it's actually going to be much bigger than I expect. And I'm trying not to freak out with it because I know the way that I've built it, there. And the architecture I've also patented, or put in a part patent to sort of how it can be done as well. So from my point of view, I don't think it's ever existed before. So the fact that, like I said, being able to sort of map and actually sequence it and put it together is a very sort of unique thing. And I think from my perspective, I see it going into any healthcare service and potentially being its own independent program that people sort of can subscribe to or go to or use themselves. From my point of view, I don't like, without putting too many harsh words on other things, a lot of things in life is designed to keep you sick. They're designed to sort of, as a system, to sort of keep you in the system. And my plan is
business.
I get it. Everything's a business. Fully get it. Fully understand it. I fully appreciate that. I'm not sort of poo-pooing that, but I'm just saying from my perspective, I'm doing a little bit the opposite. I'm being like, right, here is what's going on. Here's the education. Here's the pathways to get out of it. I'm almost like, here's the tools if you want them to go and help yourself. And here's how and what is actually going on for you. And then that's up to the person. So my point of view, like, I've built something that's actually the bridgeway. And I truly believe, honestly, I think a lot of healthcare services are crying out for need and help. They're overburnt. They're spending too much money. They've got too many more patients, and even I think I showed you, Mary Beth, even the stats on cancer treatments is just increasing year on year, but we're not having enough services to sort of support a lot of those traumas. So I see it as a big bridgeway for any trauma or any grief. It's almost like a bit of a support tool to live through for the human experience through any sort of perceived grief. But obviously, we would need to sort of tone that down into the levels of categories of grief, should I say?
Yeah, absolutely. I see massive potential for this, and once it's embraced, how it can augment and help clinicians, etc., as just that
massive.
first port of call. Absolutely, and really help target the right treatment that you need, because you've gone through a little bit of the I suppose that analysis phase at the very start. But I think that is I think there's great application, and I can't wait to see this actually in the wild and see what it looks like. I think this is going to be very exciting. But
that means a lot.
Now, now we're at
We've
that
still
point.
got a bit ahead of it. Yeah.
Bit of a hurdle now, which is our final question. This is the question that most of our guests go, "Oh my God, what?"
I love this question. I love this question. I love these kind of questions. They make me so excited.
Right. So, if you found yourself awake in front of aliens bent on destroying the planet, how would you convince them not to in 25 words or less?
Well, first of all, I would probably say to them, this world is the most magical ever, because it's the only way that you experience consciousness through a human body and a human form, which gives and delivers emotions that you cannot experience in any other shape. And so it is the bridgeway to learning and understanding through different portals. So if you eradicate us, then you're basically eradicating yourself to understand and learn further in more of a galactic, beyond comprehension or human comprehension.
Wow, very nice. Very nice. I like how you threw galactic in there. That was for me.
Yeah, I do. There's definitely, it's all about consciousness. Like this, the human body is by far the biggest gift to be able to give and receive love and experience consciousness and in an actual feeling and emotions. I think that the emotions is the biggest gift to human form, but we're not taught how to harvest that very well. Hence why I've created this app, obviously, as well. But that is part and parcel of one of the biggest gifts we've ever been given, and we do everything in our power to avoid emotions, which drives me crazy when it's actually the biggest thing. I truly believe is the gift of being human.
That's amazing. Yeah, you're right. Can I just ask, is the app available now, or is it still?
No, it's not. It's still in development.
Yeah.
Not yet, no. So I've kind of got a tiny bit of a prototype, but it's got nothing to do. It's more just to sort of give you a taste and feel, but it's got nothing to do with the actual development yet. No, so it's scoped, should I say? It's just getting the right investors and the right people to sort of back it, really, from an investment point of view.
But I'm sure when the MVP comes out, you'll let us know so that we can have a bit of a look.
Absolutely. I think everyone will be jumping on that somehow.
Definitely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm afraid we're out of time for today, but thank you so much for joining us on Techcentric Planet. I'd like to thank Natalie Matthews for joining us as our guest, and my co-host, Mary Beth Hosking.
Join us for our next episode, where we tease out another amazing innovation designed to help humanity. And remember, if you've thought of a problem, chances are someone out there is developing a solution for it. Bye.
Goodbye.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.